I'm now imagining that scene set to like a boy band.
I mean, probably couldn't be worse. Backstreet's back, all right? But
Backstreet's backside.
there you go.
Welcome to 1999, the podcast. I'm John Brooks.
And I'm Julia Sermons.
And we're back from a little break. Julia, how was the rest of your summer?
It was very baby-centric, which is both really fun and really tiring.
Was there anything like fun with the baby, or just doing raising a baby stuff?
Well, it's great. She's like crawling like a maniac, and I'm chasing after her and getting close to standing and babbling and doing all the baby stuff. It is fun.
Cool. All right. Well, we are going to be turning our attention to the end of the summer, August, to be more specific, appropriately. In this episode, we are discussing the 31st highest grossing movie of 1999, coming in one slot below another entry that we recently discussed, Galaxy Quest. Opening August the 6th at number 3 at the box office, behind the debut of the juggernaut, The Sixth Sense, at number 1, and Runaway Bride at number 2. So it had some pretty stiff competition and went on to gross $124 million worldwide on a $48 million budget. The other 1999 film besides The 13th Warrior, which we also recently discussed, from Die Hard director John McTiernan, a remake of the 1968 Steve McQueen-Faye Dunaway caper of the same name, directed by Norman Jewison, written by Leslie Dixon and Kurt Wimmer, with music by legendary Rocky composer Bill Conti, and starring Pierce Brosnan in the title role with Rene Russo, Dennis Leary, Frankie Faison, Ben Gazzara, Mark Margolis, and shoehorned in for no real reason, Faye Dunaway. Today, we are talking about the Thomas Crown Affair.
I want you to talk about women.
Oh, I enjoy women. A woman could trust me, as long as her interest didn't run too contrary to my own.
This painting is worth $100 million.
They shut off the air to drive out the tourists. Then they close the gates to keep everybody out. Diversion. Make a lot of noise over there. So over here in this room, you can take $100 million off the wall and waltz right out the front door. Oh, that's good.
Oh, yes. Do we know each other?
Not yet. I'm Catherine Banning.
And whose head are you after?
Yours.
You're enjoying something, a worthy adversary?
An entertainment.
Do you really think I'm going to sleep with the man I'm investigating?
Always get your man?
Mm-hmm.
Think you'll get me?
Oh, I hope so. Oh, this must go over.
With whom?
Whomever you bring here.
I never bring anyone here.
Well, you got your hand caught in a cookie jar now. How are you going to get out of it?
You don't believe it's possible that you could ever trust me, do you?
You're transferring assets, getting ready to run.
Suppose I did run. Then what would you have? Not the painting, $5 million fee, and not me.
Do you want to dance? Or do you want to dance?
I want you to do your job. Because right now, you're acting like a junkie.
This is about money.
It's not about the money. We like the chase.
I can leave here tomorrow. So can you.
How can I possibly trust you?
I'm going to trust you.
So, Julia, what is the Thomas Crown Affair about?
Thomas Crown, played by Pierce Brosnan, is the world's suavest finance bro, but he's getting a bit bored. Just for kicks, he pulls off an elaborate heist and lifts a nice little Monet from the Metropolitan Museum. Enter Catherine Banning, played by Rene Russo, an insurance investigator in thigh-high stockings who has been hired to recover the painting. Catherine is onto Crown almost immediately, much to the annoyance of the police. She decides to tell him she's onto him in the flirtiest way possible. This kicks off a cat and mouse game where both Crown and Catherine tell themselves that their flirtation is only strategic. But after some sexy dancing, daredevil piloting, and topless sunbathing, they start catching feelings. Can they trust each other? Thomas promises to return the painting and leaves it up to Catherine whether she will put the cuffs on him or if they'll run away together. In an elaborate anti-heist, Crown reveals that the Monet is actually hidden beneath another painting that he had donated to the museum, so he basically returned it days after he stole it. Realizing that she's off the hook with her employers, Catherine rushes to meet Crown, but he's already run away without her. She's heartbroken, but wait, who is the sexy Scotsman seated behind her on the airplane? It's Crown, of course, and things end happily after all.
I love how famously Irish Pierce Brosnan plays a Scottish person with an English accent. It's really a lot going on with the accent in this movie. The remake of the Thomas Crown Affair made one important change from the original. Rather than portraying Crown as a thrill-seeking bank robber, McTiernan pushed to make him an art thief, reasoning that this would make the character more sympathetic and, frankly, more Bond-like to audiences. In so doing, he intentionally or otherwise gave the story a fascinating new dimension, turning from not just a caper, but a metaphor for the function and purpose of art itself. Crown becomes something of a performance artist, his stunts done in service of creating drama for the sake of creating drama. The film was well received by audiences and critics who appreciated its restraint, especially coming from McTiernan, known for his action maximalism, and classic Hollywood glamour, with many praising the film for centering Russo, then in her mid-40s, as a sex symbol. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a score of 68 and Metacritic a score of 72. And the Washington Post doesn't how says Russo steals the film, calling her sexy, smart, and formidable, and calls the movie, quote, a full-throttle fantasy about as heady a movie experience as it gets. In Slate, David Edelstein wrote, quote, the world didn't need a remake of the Thomas Crown Affair. We didn't need it, but we got it anyway, and it's pretty terrific. And in Newsweek, David Anson wrote that the film is a, quote, slick, gaudily suave, guilty pleasure of a movie, which is filled to the brim with private planes, Caribbean retreats, overdone hairdos, and marathon couplings on marble stairways that would leave ordinary mortals black and blue. The emphasis has been changed from larceny to love, and the overt sexuality turned up a notch. Russo has to shed a lot more clothing than Faye Dunaway did. Given some of the odd outfits she's got to wear, that's probably a relief. But it's nice to see a Hollywood movie that appreciates a mature female body for a change. And nice to see that the Thomas Crown Affair has survived its glossy glam makeover so well. Critics that enjoyed the film, but with more reservation, note the way it tries awkwardly to deploy modern sensibilities, modern for the time sensibilities, while self-consciously evoking old ones. In still positive reviews, for instance, Todd McCarthy in Variety wrote that, quote, the characters in the Thomas Crown Affair are cool. Too cool, in fact, for the film to develop much of a pulse. And Michael Wilmington in the Chicago Tribune wrote that, quote, it's too expensive for its own good, too chic for comfort. But Mark Savlov in the Austin Chronicle was not impressed, writing, quote, why? Why remake Norman Jewison's staunchly cool 1968 heist film in such a lackadaisical, uninspired manner? Not only is it a remake of a Steve McQueen film, which automatically puts two strikes against it, but McTiernan forgoes much of what made the original superlative cinema, the pioneering and overdone use of split-screen imagery, for instance, in favor of updating and relocating the story from Boston to New York, but still cloaking the whole proceeding in a vaguely disjointed 60s retro kitsch. It goes without saying that Brosnan, while he may be a passable Bond, is no Steve McQueen, and thus McTiernan's success or failure falls squarely on the strength of his story, which unfortunately is murky at the best of times. Anyway, joining us to talk about it all is the co-founder of the late great website Television Without Pity, that happened to have launched just a year before this podcast's eponymous year, as well as the founder of Tomato Nation, where she's been writing since 1997. She's a writer, podcaster, pop culture maven, and as I recently found out on Wikipedia, a true crime bookstore owner.
Yes.
Yes.
It's Sarah Bunting. Hello, Sarah. Welcome to 1990 Podcast. It's so great to have
friends. Thank you for having me.
Are you trying to set up a gender-swapped Notting Hill?
No, I'm absolutely not trying to do that. But my husband actually was in a segment of Unsolved Mysteries back in the 80s, so it was definitely destiny. So he's just a man who played an undercover cop standing in the basement of a girl, asking her to love him. So I did.
Yeah. I just was talking about Notting Hill on a different podcast. So the concept of like niche urban bookstores is in my head right now. So that's
Sure.
what made me think of that. I actually had a friend whose brother used to always tell people my brother was on America's Most Wanted, which was true. His brother played in a reenactment on America's Most Wanted, but he always liked the shocked look on people's faces when they were like, "What? Why was your brother on America's Most Wanted?"
Yeah, no, Dan did not want to admit this. It was our first date, and I, hearing that he was an actor was like, "Oh, have you been in anything that I heard of?" So he volunteered Unsolved Mysteries, and I immediately started peppering him with questions like, "Were you a ghost? Were you a crook? Did you get to meet Robert
Did you
Stack?"
meet Robert Stack?
Yeah. It's like, "I don't appreciate you're making fun of me." And I was like, "Sadly, I am not making fun of you. Now you can make fun of me, but also I need you to answer these questions. Answer these questions 3.
Oh man, that's kind of a perfect thing to have to tell people on your first date, because they're either going to be like, "That's the coolest thing ever," or like, maybe not a second date for that. That's what you know what I mean? Like it's really helps you clean out the sort of wheat from the chaff or whatever, I guess, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. Very effective sort of funneling of people who are right for you with that.
And you were very much the wheat, Sarah. So I think the wheat's the good one, right?
I hope so. 12 years later, dang.
All right. So let's talk about the Thomas Crown Affair. I had not seen this, and I had very fond memories of it, and I had not seen it for like 25 years before revisiting it. I realized and got some thoughts. But Juliet, let's start with you. What's your sort of history with either version, really, of the Thomas Crown Affair?
So I saw this version first, and I saw it shortly after it came out on. It must have been DVD, and I remember thinking, "Oh my, this is very, very sexy." And so I think, like all things that you think are very, very sexy when you're a teenager, it's maybe slightly goofy. um, but yeah, I remember really, really liking it and finding it very adult and slinky and fun. And I'm a big fan of heist movies generally, so it's very much up my alley.
Sure. So we'll hold on what you now think of it. But Sarah, what about you?
My history with this is that I too saw this one first. I saw it in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being quite struck by it, that it did feel different from a lot of other things that were just out at that time. That it was about grown-ups and for grown-ups. I remember there being a lot of chatter in the culture about Rene Russo, being the star, and a woman in her mid-40s fucking teetering on the edge of the grave, apparently. It's like, oh, she like goes about in public without a brassiere, and she fucks. Am I allowed to curse on here?
Oh,
I hope
please.
so.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%.
A fucking few. That she fucks. Like, whoa, what a revelation! And it's like, guys, like this was a model, so let's let's tone it down with the like all hail the every woman rhetoric in the reviews. But at this time in cultural history, that it really was like kind of a surprise and a leap forward that this was going to be allowed to be centered. I would say I've not seen it since. I don't think. I would not say it has held up to my fond esteem, my fond recollections.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I want to. This also is very much my kind of sense memory of the time. That the two things that were sort of the talk of critics and of sort of the public, pop culture chatter, was that it was a pretty kind of elegant throwback heist movie for grown-ups, right? Like, it was a movie that was like fairly big budget, blockbuster, like Pierce Brosnan pretty much in the height, I think, of his bankability as a star, because he's right in the middle of his Bond films right at this point. And McTiernan, right, obviously is like as a well-known action director, and it sort of was, there was this sort of like, oh, it's so great to have this like movie that's not all about special effects and kind of does things the old sort of manual kind of way, and it's like geared towards grown-ups, and it's like entertaining but not like sensationalist. And so there was that sort of element of it, and then there was the whole like, and isn't it awesome that this 45-year-old hag is like, centered as an, it's a weird thing to kind of contend with now, because I kind of think like, I mean, obviously Rene Russo is like incredibly gorgeous and super duper hot, and like anybody who like wouldn't think that is, I don't, just insane, right? Like at that sort of age. I'm a year older than she was then now, and like, I'm like, I don't know. I feel old, I guess, but like, I don't know. But I just kind of, I think like, did it do anything? Did it change anything? Because I still think that, we also had like Sigourney Weaver and Galaxy Quest the same year, right? Where she was like around the same age, really, and also sort of like one of her sexiest roles. But I don't know, like, obviously, Hollywood has not changed that much in terms of women over 40 being sort of centered as like objects of desire within these like big budget movies, right? But I don't know, did it change anything, or was it just weird that everybody was like, oh, that's weird, she's 45?
Isn't it worse though? Like, I think like movies for adults are barely made anymore,
I don't know, but then I think of like the Red franchise, and I think of, I don't know, it's like Helen Mirren kind of is sometimes portrayed as like kind of sexy, and she's like 70 something. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think like it's just, like with the takeover of Marvel and stuff and the way cinema has just totally evolved, I think like this kind of movie would not even get made now. I guess maybe Black Bag is the counterexample to that, but it was, not, it was critically a success, but not financially a success. And I don't know. I'm interested in your thoughts. Is it any better for women in their 40s now?
I mean, as an angry old giraffe in her 50s, I really, I mean, I don't think it's better. I think it's just different, because in the late 90s, that was also a bit of a hinge, I would say, or a crossroads in terms of prestige projects like that. They definitely still could get made, but you were kind of on that ramp up to it's Marvel or it doesn't exist. And so projects like that would go to HBO or would go to Showtime and would be a prestige series or a limited series. And then, 10 years later, something like that is going to be made by AMC Plus or MGM Plus, a real streaming service that really exists. Or something like that. That it's gonna
I keep
go to
hearing that
Hulu.
it does exist, but yeah.
I
don't know where to find this MGM Plus, but I occasionally see ads for interesting looking shows on it, and I'm like, what is that?
That's actually where you get the Bond movies, right? I think
so. And
Is it?
Warrior,
Oh,
I think, was on there.
Yeah.
Epics was tied into there. Occasionally, they would have a really good like true crime 3 or 4 parter that it's like, I would recommend this, but like literally you're going into a closet and coming out in Narnia, and then there's like breadcrumbs leading you to this channel, and then a portal closes behind you and you turn into a dragon. But if you care about John Wayne Gacy, try to find it. I mean, I don't know. It is a very different time in terms of what gets made for whom and where it goes in terms of the
Yeah.
medium that it ends up in. So I don't think it necessarily changed anything, particularly since you're talking about that top actor privilege echelon of someone who was a model and had no pores and was very charismatic and, you know, as groundbreaking as it was supposed to be. You know, it's not like they plucked her from a bench in a mall in Dubuque. Like, give me a break. Again,
Right.
this is still a Hollywood person.
I did actually catch some pores in one close up, and I nearly gasped because I was just like, pores, incredible. We used to have them.
I know. Yeah, I know. Remember them? What a time to be alive.
I think, like, I don't know. I guess the person that I kind of think of as maybe indication of maybe we are a little bit further along, like that when there's someone in their 40s presented as kind of the femme fatale, right? Sort of like sexy, right, character in the movie. Like we don't like write articles about it anymore like we did in 99 about Rene Russo. You know, Charlize Theron like just turned 50. I think she's still very much like, you know, presented in a lot of films as like the kind of badass, right, kind of like sexy femme fatale figure without anybody sort of like writing an article about that, right? So they're few and far between. I just, you know, and obviously like it's just not generally better for anybody over 40, right? Any woman over 40 in Hollywood than it was 25 years ago. But I think like this kind of thing, it was like, you know, the year prior. And Sarah, you might remember this, like there were literally articles written about how great it was that we have like plus sized stars now, and they would be like, for instance, Kate Winslet, and it's like, okay,
Yeah. I think there's also been in the intervening years, I think there's been much more of a not crossover exactly, but it's much more um the narratives and the series and films from overseas are much more accessible, I would say, or much more routinely accessible. And you're watching stuff like The Bridge or Prime Suspect, actually, which like a lot of this stuff came into my house growing up and in my 20s via PBS. That it's like, oh, Europeans, for instance, or like the original British cozy mysteries like Inspector Lynley, like people were just allowed to look like people and
yeah,
have like
yeah,
a bit, like their hair was a bit shit, like greasy. I mean, you know, Inspector Lynley is like not all that good, but it's like, okay, well, that's what a cop is going to wear. And that's how many times a week she's going to wash her hair is not that many, is like not multiple times. And that, but they were still compelling and still attractive, like jokes about British teeth aside. We've all made them, but I think that having a wider exposure to people that just like looked regular, and also the sort of Depardieu naissance, like his personal behavior aside,
yeah.
that someone with a nose that would have its own congressman would be positioned as a sex symbol in properties in America, I think was like, oh, people can just look normal and like have pores and like a mole and
Yeah.
not have to look like they were extruded from you know, in a factory in Burbank. So that might have had something to do with it, but hard to say.
That's a good point.
Um,
I also like I to the actual like sex element of this movie, I was kind of shocked at how sort of in re-looking at it, how like overtly sexy the sex scene is. Like I feel like it's a lot more kind of like explicit and sort of like I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but like not the sort of thing I was used to seeing at the time either. Like I don't find it sort of vanilla at all. Like it's pretty steamy as like sex scenes in like mainstream movies go.
yeah, I have to say I'm not a total fan. I agree with you mostly, but I'm not a total fan of liquor being poured on people's breasts or chests as part of a sex
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but yeah, mostly pretty sexy.
But it's like weirdly over the top. I mean, it's like very like porny. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a very like, I don't know. It's not, I feel like when you have sex scenes in like major Hollywood movies, especially in the 1990s, right? You like do your best to make it seem as sort of like, okay, we're gonna kind of indulge, but like, I don't know, kind of blow past this as fast as possible. It's very weirdly kind of like they're having a good time, and and that seems very out of place and like very uncommon, and very like European, to Sarah's point, right? As for me at the time, I don't know.
I mean, I just was like completely preoccupied by how painful that staircase looked to have metaphorical or literal bones like touch it. I just was like, and then there's like a little strip of carpet that looked like, okay, well, then you're going to get rug rash. And then it's like time lapsing and they're still on this staircase. And I'm like, oh my God, you fucking weirdos. There are 17 bedrooms in this joint. Find one. Find a flat surface with a pillow on it. Life is too short. It's like however old you are when you're like, oh my God, trying to have sex in a bathtub. Like, you know what? Nope. And then in the movies, they're like insisting that this is awesome. And you're like, oh my God, this is not real life. It was, I remember thinking like, I didn't feel that I wasn't uncomfortable watching it. It felt natural. And it also was like centering people for whom sex was not necessarily a romantic or familial end. And we were also, as a culture, kind of coming out of that weird place narratively where for a long time, like unprotected sex in the movies or movies that are not going to sort of explicitly refer to whatever birth control or sexually transmitted infections are being protected against. Like they're not showing a condom being unrolled. But
Right.
sex could kill you for a while. And the culture had a very flinchy, traumatized relationship with that fact, and wasn't always sure. It's like, let's either everyone's holding hands or, you know, this is a tragedy, or it's really like porny and Mickey Rourke is somewhere in the production. And it's like, I think just to sort of come back to a more, not normal even, but just like human way of depicting a sexual relationship between two mature adults, that was something of an evolution from like from films that were perhaps a little more comfortable focusing on just shooting a bunch of people, because that was like less lethal somehow. I don't know. I'm not a sociologist. It's just often my impression that in the late 90s, there was this like, oh, okay, they found treatment plans and this is no longer like AIDS, HIV is no longer an absolute death sentence automatically. Let's remember when it was a little bit more fun to flirt and fuck and all that stuff. So
I really like that she laughs a lot during the scene because I feel like because they have this kind of antagonistic seductive relationship, like you could have made it more in just like totally intense and hot in that way. And the fact that she's laughing, like I really enjoyed that, and I felt like it showed another dimension to their relationship.
Yeah, and I think you've like hit on what I'm sort of responding to, right? Which is that you know, this thing I was kind of trying to articulate but couldn't really, which is that, you know, I as someone who, you know, went to health classes in like the early 1990s in high school, right? being told that like you will die if you have sex because AIDS uh, all the
Yeah.
time. That the way that Hollywood kind of in the 90s responded to that was that all of the sex scenes were very sort of like taboo and like sensationalist, right? And like a little
Uh-huh.
like weird and dirty, and like that's kind of what sold it. And that this is played for fun and there's laughing and sort of this carefree attitude and like weird stares and whatever else, uncomfortable moments, that it does. I think that's kind of what makes it so, it feels so sort of out of place to me, right? That you just didn't, this is sort of like a lot more the sort of thing you might see now, but it just felt really weird for the 1990s, and I was kind
Yeah.
of shocked to go back and see it, right? Like in this context of like living in the future, from uh, from that era. Also, like we should note that it's funny that we talked all of this about streaming services and what this movie would look like now and if it would still get made. I thought about that a lot. Whether or not this is the sort of thing that would like appear in a movie theater or even get the budget to be made today. And I did think of this as like the sort of thing that we tend to see sort of on Netflix, right? These days. But having said that, and ironically, like Amazon is bankrolling a remake coming out in 2027 with Michael B. Jordan in the title role, which is an interesting idea, and we'll see what that take is. But I assume they're going to release it in theaters. But obviously, it's Amazon who's paying for it. So, in fact, they are making this movie again today, and in fact, streaming services do have something to do with it. So,
Is this
keep an eye out on that.
a good time then to talk about the original? Have we all seen the original? Do we have thoughts about?
We can talk about the original. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about sort of the remake aspect of this as well, and whether or not this movie justifies one, and let alone two remakes. But yeah, what's your thoughts on the original?
So I mean, like the one the I thought this one was more romantic, not just because
Mm-hmm.
the original doesn't end happily, right? She's chosen to snare him, and then he's escaped, and she's just kind of left with her broken heart. But also, like having Steve McQueen in the role, right? He's just a much cooler, much more contained actor, and I think we really are meant to believe that he's in love with her, but it just comes across totally different with McQueen in the role. And I think even though he's being this like suave gentleman thief, uh, there is a little more romance to Brosnan's performance, and there's a little bit of him tipping his hand more and really showing his feelings to her in a way that makes it more romantic, in a way that I found kind of fun.
Sarah, have you seen the original?
It's been a really long time. I think I rented it after seeing the remake in the theater.
Yeah,
I went back and, I think they reissued it at Blockbuster. Ask your grandparents, kids.
cashing in.
And
Yeah,
yeah. And, I remember thinking that it had a timeless cool to it, which McQueen movies tend to have because McQueen is in them. And the energy of McQueen, Julia's right that it is a more contained, like indication of feeling from him. But then Faye Dunaway has zero chill at any time. And having her in the remake, in the 90s
yeah.
remake, sort of reminds you of like the completely different wavelengths on which the two pairs seem to communicate. Um, and, of course, the different ending as noted. I mean, I think they're kind of not as comparable as you might think, but I also think that the director of the original was a better fit with the material than the director of the remake was with the material.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you hit everything on the head there. Faye Dunaway being shoehorned into this movie makes no sense. It drags the movie down. It's completely out of place. It's just weird stunt casting that serves no function, and in fact, I think makes the movie somewhat worse, because I think it takes Crown kind of out of context and so does a lot of like showing instead of telling, right? Which I don't think is at all helpful to the movie. I also like agree that obviously, I mean, I think one of the reasons this is kind of called the Thomas Crown Affair and sold as a remake is because otherwise, like, they would sue, right, for it being too close to the Steve McQueen movie. But it's not really a remake of it. It really is kind of a sort of reimagining of it, right? And Pierce Brosnan and Steve McQueen, I do think, have very fundamentally kind of different screen presences, and I very much liked Pierce Brosnan. I think this is the role that I have liked Pierce Brosnan the most in of anything that he's done. But to that last point, Sarah, and this is the one that I keep thinking about and haven't stopped thinking about since I rewatched it, which is that, this might be John McTiernan's second best movie, right behind like Die Hard, but he also should never have directed this movie. He is completely wrong for this movie, and I think that the two heist sequences, the sort of beginning heist sequence and the return sequence, are like, that's when he's firing on all cylinders, and that's really where he's showing his craft, right, as someone who can direct these sort of set pieces. But everything else about it, it does not at all work to his strengths as a director. And I think this movie would have been miles better, right? And this is not to say anything. This is not a slight against McTiernan, but it's just the wrong match, like for the material. And I think this movie would have been miles better with a director with a much more sort of, heist film aesthetic and vision, right? Who could have kind of put the pieces together. It feels disjointed at times. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there's a director behind the camera who, like, I feel like he's getting kind of bored every once in a while because he wants to throw in an action sequence and can't do that. That's my kind of big gripe, right, about the film itself as it is.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fucking Soderberg picture.
Yeah, right. I mean, yes.
This is a Soderberg movie. 100%. End of.
Yep.
I mean, and maybe this is just because I have seen Ocean's 11 conservatively 100 times. It could act out all the parts, including like set design. It's like, this is me being the fountain from the end. It's I mean, I
so
love
great character.
I mean, that was me. Did you like what I did there? The vibe of the 90s Thomas Crown Affair is like, you have to understand that, like, at the heart of any heist movie, there's also relationships. That's why anyone cares about it. And say what you will about like Clooney and Roberts and their chemistry in the Ocean's films, I don't have a ton good to say, but Soderbergh knew how to work with it, and that's the point. I do think McTiernan was bored at times, but I also think he was distracted enough by like the kissy stuff that he knew he was expected to do that he didn't do an especially good job with the heist parts. Like, those felt a beat behind and too impressed with themselves to me. And I just felt like this needs somebody who's a little more confident in all the aspects of this story, who can montage some of this stuff or make it a little more collagey. Like, not to make Soderbergh direct everything. He, doesn't need my help, but like, even this is a wild thing to say, but like, even a Terrence Malick who would just like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like cut it a little finer and then just throw everything up in the air and see what happens. Like there's just no, this story needs some brio that McTiernan has, but not for this story. And once I realized that, I was like, you have two problems here. The major big one is that this is a Soderberg movie that Soderberg did not direct. The second one is that finance bro making like winky comments about how what his legal job is actually also theft. I'm not trying to hear that shit in 2025. Like,
Ugh,
we live in a
yeah,
post Doge
it hits
world. This is
different.
not
It's
cute.
different. Yeah.
I don't care, like, even from Pierce Brosnan. And I mean, hilariously, I happened to watch a Thursday Murder Club right after rewatching Thomas Crown Affair.
Uh-huh.
And it was
Yep.
like, this is a much more appealing, sexy Pierce Brosnan to me than that Bond era, not a single hair out of place, pneumatic Pierce Brosnan. So like that, the sort of finance broiness of it, and then I didn't particularly buy him as like, the cat burglar. Like, I don't know. I'll just watch Sneakers again if I want to see somebody who doesn't really know what he's fucking doing. But yeah, this is what it comes down to for me. This was like diverting enough.
Yeah.
I enjoyed certain scenes with Dennis Leary and Rene
Yeah.
Russo. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
bad
Leary's
movie,
great.
but it's not its best self. That is what I would say.
I was listening to some podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but they were saying the only person more attractive than Brosnan in his Bond era is Brosnan today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Uh,
I love third act Pierce Brosnan. I think he's the best of the Pierce Brosnans.
and I was
By
I
far.
was
Agree.
first introduced to him in the series Remington Steele, where he
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
played a con man who becomes the front for a private detective who's a woman, and she can't get clients to take her seriously, so he becomes uh, her front man. And like if you, I was looking back at it actually to prepare for this, and he's just so kind of callow and blank in a
Yeah.
way in that is just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, yeah, he just got much better with age. Um, but could we like dig into the heist movie of it all? Like what makes a really good heist movie and what is not stacking up here?
Yeah, because Sarah, I'm interested. Like, um, I agree with you. Like, I wanted the heist scenes to be more elaborate and go on a little bit longer. I think the way that they're actually done is pretty great. And like, honestly, the whole Cinderman sequence is like one of my favorite sequences in like any movie. That just fires in all cylinders. It's a great use of music and everything else. But yeah, let's talk about like good heist movies versus like what is it that this is kind of missing. Obviously as an Ocean's 11 aficionado, you know a thing or two about, since you played The Fountain, a thing or two about a good heist movie. But what separates the good heist from the not so good heist movie?
Well, I think that I think the pacing is crucial, and that you really, whether it's the way that it is on the page, the way that you've set it up at the script level, or the way that you're thinking about it when you're shooting it, and probably 90% of it happens in post. But there were moments in this one, like all the like Magritte bowler hat guys kind
Mm-hmm.
of fanning out through the museum. Like these were all really good ideas, but the problem was that I think they had not stepped through how actual museum officials, NYPD detectives, and so on would behave
Yeah.
in situations like this. I don't think they really understood what, if there's like all of a sudden a gazillion different guys in bowler hats, it's like they're just going to lock down the museum. Like, this is NYPD. They have the largest counterterrorism budget in the world. Okay, was that true at that time? Actually, maybe. It was. But if you have like a war room full of cops on site, you're not just going to be chasing that and like, oh, well, we lost him. Like, how? I mean, I know cops aren't necessarily genie but like, I don't know, lock the front door, professors.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that, which in the Ocean's movies, like there are, they're not perfect. And especially like the last one, you're kind of like spiraling out of control and just letting Al Pacino eat an entire set in Henderson, Nevada. But most of them, uh, they have thought through like what would be the actual security response? How would a human being act in these situations? What is the likelihood of just like non-player character civilians gumming up the works of a heist? How bad can you count on every security guard to be? Um, would Dominic Chianese Jr. actually be able to, flip through all these lasers and not get caught while hanging from a tiny sprinkler pipe? There were just things that were not reading as likely or credible to me. And then the pacing did not, it just wasn't quite confident and quick enough for me not to be thinking about things that didn't make sense.
Mm.
So, long way of saying, like, either speed up the cuts or do a better job in the writing of just making sure that things that are not logical behavior are not happening every 5 minutes because the titular character needs to be able to get away. Like, okay, I understand that. You could work backwards from that, but maybe this is an issue with remaking a like pre-computer age
Yes.
heist movie.
Yes. I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
find it terribly fun to watch.
Yeah.
And the nature of the plot and the AC and whatever, it just kind of dragged. And I actually found the parts where Rene Russo is untangling what happened and she's kind of enjoying the genius of it. Like that was more compelling to watch to me than the actual thing itself.
Yeah.
I think the part where he, slides under the gate and actually steals the thing, like that was the most fun part.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
talking about, yeah, I mean, because like in the first Ocean's 11, right? It's always the scheme is always not what you think it is, and the
Mm-hmm.
scheme keeps transforming and unfolding, and that's just really fun in a way that this is not. And then talking about realism in it, like you're Thomas Crown, you're just leaving all these Romanians or Albanians or however they are twisting in the wind. Like they're going to come
Yeah.
after you. Like, this is
Yeah.
you're leaving a lot of loose
Yeah.
ends here.
Yeah. Well, right. Once they find out that he was the guy behind, I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of obvious plot holes, and this movie, I think this kind of gets back to the McTiernan side of it, that it feels like it was written as something like a fantasy. Like it's all very sort of unreal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and people again like don't talk and behave like human beings. Rene Russo's character like seldom talks like a believable human being. The cops all talk very copish. And the whole thing just feels incredibly unlikely and elevated. And I like from the writing standpoint, it feels like what the writers did was take a heist movie, re-center it around art, and then try and say something about sort of why we value certain works of art and aesthetic and beauty and like all of that sort of thing, right down to the casting of Rene Russo. Like there's some really interesting elements to this about sort of like why is that painting worth $100 million, right? Like what is the point of paintings, right? What like who cares if it's stolen from a museum? And like, and when he just puts it on his wall for a day and then we find out like hands it right back. Like there's a lot it's like where the heist is kind of incidental in this movie. And that's kind of why I feel that all those elements never really quite come together because it has the wrong director and because it has kind of the wrong vision. So I enjoy the heist elements of it. I never really quite thought of it as a heist movie. Like, I remember when I watched it the first time, like being really interested in the sort of forgery stuff. I think I learned more about sort of art forgery from this movie 25 years ago than I knew before. And I've like learned more since, but it really intrigued me. And like, I want to know more about that. Like, I want to see more of this, like how the forging works. Like, I want to get into that storyline. Like, I'd love to like learn more about like Mark Margolos's character and sort of like that whole backstory. Like, those are the roads I want to go down here, because I think that that's sort of like, you know, the sort of the gears behind the machine that's happening in this movie, I think, are far more interesting, right, than sort of like what ends up on screen, which feels like a really sort of weird and wasted opportunity, I think.
And I did like those processy parts, and I thought that she was very good at sort of like, she would be realizing, like, not out loud, but she would be realizing whatever it is he's up to or how he set up a given thing. And she'd be like, that's good. That's a nice bit of business to herself. And those bits when she's sort of stepping through it or explaining it to Dennis Leary, who like is such a Dennis Leary character that I can't even remember the character's name. It's just Detective Dennis Leary, which that's fine.
Lieutenant.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
that's
not
right.
Lieutenant. Detective Dennis Leary.
Dennis Leary.
But then going back to something that you said, John, about like, you know, why is art? Why do we pay this much for it? Like, what once you have acquired everything and you're as rich as you could possibly be, what is your motivation in life?
Yeah.
But like, this doesn't seem to be someone that is necessarily suffering from any I'm too rich ennui, as we find out, because we have to watch this mofo sailing a catamaran in the Hudson for like 2 weeks. Who cares?
It was so
oh my
long.
God. So long.
And that actually was McTiernan's particular decision. He changed it from the polo match in the original, I kind of like his thought process, where he was like, well, what do rich people do for shits and giggles now? Right? And he's like, race these giant fucking yachts. So that's what we're going to put in our movie this time. And I'm like, okay, I understand your motivation there, but then you tried to make like an action sequence out of it, and it's kind of boring. But points for the idea, I suppose.
Yeah, but then it's also like, then what really is this motivation for any of this besides, I just want to feel, and now I've attracted the attention of an investigator for whom I feel. Okay, great. That's not a heist movie. That's, it's not. I mean, there's a heist in it, but that's like not McTiernan's jam. Like, again, going back to Soderberg, like, and what Julia said about like the heists within heists in Ocean's 11, and it's like, is he really trying to get all this money out of the vault, or is he actually just trying to pants Terry Benedict? Why not both? The test does not split 11 ways. Well, shit, he didn't have to make that choice. It all worked out.
Well, this is a very pre-2008 movie in the way that it like, but all the finance bros are very well cast as like a bunch of like unlikable douches as well. So I'll give him that. But Julie, what were we gonna say?
No, I was thinking like the genre of heist movie seems to be very flexible, and it like you can consider a lot of things heist movies if you want. And like I guess maybe I'd peg this more as like a gentleman thief movie. But like, because part of the fun of the heist is like getting the whole band together, getting the whole gang together, and hatching the plan, and then seeing the plan executed. And like, there are these great like. There's this French movie from the 50s, Fifi, that was considered like one of the first heist movies, and it's a jewel thief movie, and it's just this entirely silent sequence where you see the whole gang executing the.
It's so good. True story, apparently. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, you just don't have that here. because like this gang of totally interchangeable, vaguely Eastern
Eastern
European,
European. Yeah.
Hmm.
like you don't care about them at all. So it's not really fun in that way.
But that was also a pretty clever signaling to the audience that like these aren't the real these aren't the real thieves. Like you kind of them sort of being these caricatures of like the Eastern European, guns for hire, I think was a pretty fun way of being like, there's more going on here in case you hadn't figured that out in the first like 10 minutes of the movie. No, I think I would distinguish between like a caper and a heist. And I think this is a caper, right? Where
Yeah.
capers have like tropical islands and sexiness, whereas heists have like, you know, assemble the team and then try to pull off and get between the lasers and all that sort of thing. I think one of my favorite heist movies of the last like 25 years is The Score from 2001, which is a Frank Oz movie with Robert De Niro and Ed Norton, and the upper half of Marlon Brando. And that's kind of like, it's kind of on the same scale as this movie. Like it's not huge, and it's like focuses on just a few characters, but like it is about the heisting. It is about like the theft and how it's done, and then how people are like double and triple crossed, and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, I think that's what separates the like heist movie from the caper movie, if there is a distinction between those two things.
Can we go back to Dennis Leary for a sec? Because actually, Sarah, I really wanted to get your thoughts on this because he seemed like a very kind of like Jerry Orbach Law and Order. This is like the same vintage, and he kind of struck me as having the same vibe.
Yeah, for sure. And he just, now that you say that, it reminded me of and I just rewatched this episode and pitched it for the Extra Hot Great Canon, one of my other podcasts, and it's the Julia Roberts episode where she plays Katrina Katrina Van Lowe, or so, like whatever fancy name. She used to be like Annie McGurk from Syracuse, but she changed her name and like screwed someone over and killed them with Viagra. And this was a huge, like, big time episode that even people who didn't watch the show anymore watched it because she was on it to, be next to her boyfriend, Benjamin Bratt, at that time. And there is a lot of, like, Lenny Briscoe, played by Jerry Orbach, trying to be like, I am also here trying to ask you actual questions while you're trying to flirt with Ray. And there was a lot of that energy in Dennis Leary's performance, and he's like kind of trying to flirt with, or at least get the attention of, Rene Russo. And she's like, with Pierce Brosnan in the shot? No. And there was definitely a similar energy there. I also got the sense that Leary maybe had told himself or been told by his people or whatever that like he was going to be cracking this case in this movie, like, that his character, like that the affair part, like l'affaire Thomas Crown, was that he was going to solve the case, and instead he's just like yelling into a walkie-talkie that he's being humiliated by Thomas Crown. So I did get the sense, like there was a sort of building sense of resignation from Dennis Leary that it was like they could have gotten anyone to play this role,
When he
including Jerry Orbach, who could have just come down the street from the Law and Order set and been like, "This is fine. I do this every day."
when he quipped that, oh, these women are wearing my salary, I was like, that's pure Lenny Briscoe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's like a highlight of this. Honestly, I really like the sort of comic relief, and then also sort of the like reality checking in nature of Dennis Leary. Right, Dennis Leary looks so much like every guy from Boston, that whenever he's like on screen, he's like reminding Rene Russo that she's like got a job to do, and isn't supposed to be like, in this sort of fabulous love affair with the bajillionaire art thief. And I think that dynamic actually is one of the more like fun and interesting elements of this movie, and that you kind of do need a Dennis Leary to play that, because Dennis Leary in kind of a different context could maybe be like plausibly someone who asks someone like Rene Russo out for dinner, but like not again as Pierce Brosnan's around. And I like that part's kind of funny. I like him and Frankie Faison. Like I just think that it's a good little like buddy cop, right? They're kind of bumbling, but really like they just don't care that much about art. And like I like it. I wish it was like so many more things in this movie, like better developed, a little bit richer. But I think it played more than just a generic purpose, right? And I didn't like remember that Dennis Leary was in this movie until I rewatched it, and I was like, I kind of like him in this.
Yeah, no, he's good. He's good. It just is one of those things that it's like it's really vogue to be like, I'm going to, complain about the movie I wanted to see instead of judging based on what it was actually trying to do. But part of me kind of wishes that there had been a like sequel or like, I don't know, DVD extras. Remember those? That was just like him and Rene Russo in character at like sitting outside the Interpol parole hearing for Thomas Crown or something and being like, how's it been? Okay. Oh, you're not wearing the leg irons. Got it. And just like checking in, like having a catch up about whatever happened in the intervening year and a half, 2 years since she and Thomas Crown lammed it. I don't know. I just think their chemistry was, and it was also like pretty straightforward co-worker chemistry that, I mean, here again, Soderberg does that pretty well, or has in the past.
Yeah, they were supposed to be a sequel, and Pierce Brosnan wanted Charlize Theron to be in it. So but it never happened. It kept going into development hell, and then now here we are. And Pierce Brosnan is old, haggard guy with long gray beard, and so probably not going to happen. But maybe he'll make a cameo in the Michael B. Jordan version, the same way that Faye Dunaway made a useless cameo in this version.
I mean, I hope he does. Like Thursday Murder Club, he's looking pretty good. He's like wearing a tight concert T-shirt, silver
be his
fox
psychiatrist.
Yeah, like he had food in his beard in one scene, and I was like, I still absolutely would. That's fine. Let me help you with that.
I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, I am too. Can we talk real quick about also Bill Conti's score? This to me is one of the things that really does not work.
No, I'm so glad you said that.
Although I will say, like there are times when it absolutely works, when it's like it's fantastic and like really really meshes really well with what's happening on screen. And then there's times where I was like, oh god, this is like during all of these sort of romantic getaway scenes, I'm like, this is terrible. Like this is not at all matching what I'm seeing on screen. It is very weird because there are times in this movie where the music is just perfectly timed and presented. I mentioned it before, like the whole like Nina Simone Sinnerman sequence is just awesome. But yeah, boy, if McTiernan was the wrong director for this, then Bill Conti, famous composer of the Rocky movies, no.
Yeah. And Sarah, your feelings on jazz are well documented.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, yes, they are, but there's a time and place for jazz, and also this just felt like, again, it didn't push quite hard enough. To like, it needed a throwback, like mid-century feel to it on the soundtrack, and this was just a little bit burbly and elevator-y. I don't know who did the soundtrack for oh my god, help me, Linda Fiorentino, Bill Pullman, You Better Run, Last Seduction. Whoever did that, it was just sort of like this springy, it was like noir that had been left out on the counter overnight music. And it was like, at first you're like, this is way too like springy and happy for this story, but then you realize that's the point of it. Sometimes the soundtrack in Thomas Crown Affair seemed like it was doing that, but it just needed a more like, I don't know, 60s oobop shabam thing happening throughout to because the like infernal tootling with the saxophone at times was really like, was this a placeholder track? It just needed to be more consistent, I think, and more vintage.
Also, the original had this great song, which I think is only in the credits, but the Windmills of Your Mind song by Michel Legrand,
Yep.
which is really like weird and fun. And I forget who sings it in the original Thomas Crown Affair, but they do. They do.
Noel. Oh God, go ahead. I'll get it for you.
That does occur. That does recur in the remake when they're in the scene where they're shopping for no. I don't know why that scene is in there, but it has a very like smooth, jazzy version of it that's not good.
Yeah.
I guess for the original, Norman Jewison like wanted Henry Mancini, and maybe this is very like, you know, Henry Mancini adjacent. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe McTiernan's trying to like fulfill Norman Jewison's attempt at Henry Mancini. I don't know. Noel Harrison is the one who sang
okay.
Windmills of Your Mind in the original, and Sting is the one who does the version of it in the end credits here, because of course he is. It's 1999. Who else would be doing the cover?
Oh God, yeah, Fields of Gold indeed.
Oh yeah, I love Fields of Gold.
Yeah, and
but
like he was considered really sexy at the time because of his oversharing about his personal life.
Yeah, and he was like a sexy old guy, right? I mean, he was old 25 years ago. He's even older now, but he was like, you know, your mom's favorite sexy singer guy from the 80s. So I guess it fits that sort of element of the movie to have Sting sing that song. But yeah, I remember I was thinking, Julia, about when we talked about Summer of Sam when I was watching this, right? And like a similar kind of thing where it's just sort of like, as much as I love Terrence Blanchard, like it's sort of like so much of this just doesn't work for what's happening on screen. It's just a very weird juxtaposition. And this is a movie where like it really is important. Like a movie like this is often as much kind of a music video as it is, you know, a movie. And yeah, it really just drops the ball in way too many places. And like, you know, I don't think it needs like a Hans Zimmer kind of score, but just, yeah, something that's more kind of throwbacky, swingy, upbeat. This just sounds like Showtime or Cinemax movie music. Most, you know what I mean? Like, just not. It just doesn't. Yeah, does not.
The song during the sex scene was not great.
Oh God, so bad, so bad. Yeah, I don't know who that is or what that song is, but it felt very 90s.
It really did.
It does not age well,
and not in that fun boy band way, but in that Kenny G at Red Rocks way that I was like, oh my God, like
Kenny G at Red Rocks way.
You have the budget to not do this.
Yeah,
don't do this.
Yeah,
I'm now imagining that scene set to like a boy band.
I mean, probably couldn't be worse. Probably.
Yeah.
Backstreet's back, all right? What?
Backstreet's backside.
There you go.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like a re-edit, different music. this could be a better movie. I don't think it's bad. I still actually really quite enjoyed watching it. I'm still just very. I mean, I just think like Rene Russo is just really fun to watch here, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think that Pierce Brosnan was so kind of overwhelmed by his sort of Bond persona that it was just nice to see him kind of, I don't know, do something that was a little bit more sort of fancy free than Bond. He had a very we haven't talked about the Bond movie from '99 yet, Julia, but we will eventually. But I think his Bond era was very sort of, I don't know, icy, right, and not a ton of fun, and it's just kind of fun to see him more in that Remington Steele mode, I think, and yeah, I mean, it was a very different experience than I remembered having the first time I watched it, for sure. But yeah, some things about it still just sort of are kind of charming.
Yeah, I think his Bond, they were kind of overcorrecting from the Roger Moore era.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little.
Oh, Timothy Dalton erasure.
Well, Dalton even more so, right?
No, I
Dalton.
didn't mean to do that because
environmentalist Bond. What a nightmare. Oof. Where in the Brosnan Bond era were we as of Thomas Crown? Is that was it his second?
Yes.
Third.
Okay.
Third. We are
Third?
3 or let's see, October and September. We're 3 months away from the release of The World Is Not Enough, which is his third Bond movie, which again, we'll talk about it on the podcast at some point in the near future, but also features the single worst screen performance of all time, with Denise Richards as the nuclear scientist.
Oh God. Yeah, I think I saw that one in the theater too. Oof.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah. Talk about doesn't have the range.
It's actually a decent Bond movie until she shows up. And I'm not trying to shit on Denise Richards here, but man, does she ever bring that movie down?
Yeah.
In just astonishing ways. But yeah, so he's right in the middle of it. I mean, he did 4 or 5 Bond movies. I think he did 4. Right. So GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, World's Not Enough, and then Die Another Day. I think that was it, right? Just 4.
I think that's right.
So we're right in the midst of it here, but yeah, he never really quite became a massive bankable Hollywood star, which is kind of surprising, right? He then went on and did kind of weird stuff like Mamma Mia and that sort of thing. And
yeah, I mean, I feel like he was always working, but then there was really a lot of garbage that you were seeing in the sort of Saturday afternoon at 4:30 hangover slot, just being rerun endlessly on basic cable, like Lawnmower Man. What the actual
Lawnmower
hell
Man? Yeah,
was anyone's agent thinking? Jeff Fahey, I think that's that's neon finding its level, but oh my God, Brosnan, what are you doing? That was really a lot. But it does feel like even when he was Bond, it did kind of feel like he had been the cultural universe had been waiting for him to finally be cast as Bond. And then even that didn't quite catch. I feel like we've known who he is and he's been very famous for really a long time. But I mean, it really is fascinating that someone that hot with that much charisma, you look at his IMDb and you're like, where? I mean, I'm never unhappy to see him, and I think he's a good actor. I actually watched Mobland, most of it.
That's what I was going to ask about, right? Yeah, the new Guy Ritchie show, right?
And he's been in garbage, but he always comes dressed to play and does his thing, and then he leaves. But it's why was there that sort of, I don't even know, greater than the sum of its parts response to Daniel Craig's Bond, that it didn't happen that way for Pierce Brosnan? Is it just because we had been waiting so long for him to be Bond that by the time it happened, we were like, but hasn't this already happened? I don't know if I'm making sense with that, but it just, I don't know. It was like an anticlimax or something. Like his whole career after like 94 sort of seemed like, wait, haven't we already been
Yeah.
here? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually didn't see a lot of the Bond movies, the Brosnan Bond movies when they came out because I was already, I think it was TBS would show Bond marathons
Mm-hmm.
over Christmas. And so I
Yep.
just kind of consumed all of them with like leftover chocolates. And,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
so was really kind of a little bit snooty about, liking the Connery ones. And, some of them were ones. And so I just kind of, I don't know what my problem was, but I just felt like they weren't. I mean, I just think it was the whole like Bond being a creature of the '60s, like just feeling
Yeah.
like it didn't kind of work. Although I recently rewatched GoldenEye, and like they're actually trying to do something interesting there with the collapse of the Soviet Union. And when you like look back on like what had
Yeah.
happened with all the oligarchs and stuff, it was actually pretty
Yeah.
prescient,
Yeah.
except for
Agreed.
them trying to pass off Robbie Coltrane and Minnie Driver as Russians, which is just absolutely
Oh my
ludicrous.
God, I
But
forgot about
Minnie
that.
Driver's fucking hilarious in that movie. You're making like all the right points. Like Julia, you touched on something that I constantly on my soapbox about. Like if we're gonna carry on the Bond franchise, like I think we talked about this when we talked about Austin Powers, right? Like go back to the '60s, like make it a period piece.
Yeah.
Do what the Fantastic Four did, which like someone was smart enough to realize that the Fantastic Four like only really works in the '60s. So like find a way to do
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And the more recent movie, like they did it and it works and it's great. And like go back and do that. Put Bond back into the water, like put him back into the tank where
Yeah.
he belongs. And I really hope that if we're going to carry on this franchise, we start doing that. But you're also right about like GoldenEye. I think was pretty clearly the best Bond film of like the recent era, especially like of the '90s era. And like, yeah, it's because it in a way that made sense because we're like 5 years removed from the end of the Cold War. Still sort of had the Russian element that like
Right.
worked, and that's kind of a coda to all the stuff from the 60s and 70s. I also think, to your point, Sarah, like you're absolutely right that people had been like make Pierce Brosnan James Bond ever since Remington Steele, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that the interim of Timothy Dalton really also hindered that because he and Dalton kind of have a similar air. Like they're kind of similar looking people,
Yeah.
right? They like looked like the same kind of James Bond, and Dalton brought a real coldness to the character, which I kind of loved. But then like Brosnan was trying to navigate the sort of bridging the Sean Connery to Roger Moore to Timothy Dalton into Bond, and I think was dealt kind of an unfair hand. Like I don't think he's sort of imaginative or sophisticated enough an actor to pull that off, and I think all of those things sort of ultimately played against him. I think casting someone like Daniel Craig, who people flipped out on the internet because he was blonde. But I think that was necessary because he doesn't look like the previous Bonds. He was such a departure, and like that's almost sort of what made his arc kind of work, right? So I just
Yeah.
think that Brosnan was kind of screwed by elements like way beyond his control. But I do really enjoy him, and
Yeah.
I love him in supporting roles. Like I love him when he does weird stuff. Like I think he's just a lot of fun, and I like him a lot here. So
And I think some of the things that don't work in Bond movies, like you don't necessarily realize that they don't work if you are in a theater, like in the third row, surrounded by that, Proustian smell of theater butter. And like he's driving up a parking garage ramp, like stairs in the wrong direction,
yeah,
chasing
yeah,
whichever countryman is the villain this time. And it's like, this is these movies, this franchise is a creature of a giant screen.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like
Mm-hmm.
whatever Creature from the Black Lagoon was meant to be seen at a drive-in. And
Mm-hmm.
I found myself wondering while watching Thomas Crown, like, was part of the reason that I responded to this much more in, in the original viewing, seeing it in a theater,
Yeah.
having my peanut M&Ms and sort of enjoying their sort of giant faces and butts. They're very nice butts.
Yeah.
It's like half a story tall, and is part of that immersive experience maybe more necessary for a movie like this, that it's like it doesn't really hold together. Sometimes the music is bad. This is not the perfect director for the material, but there is something about being, alone in the dark, or whatever the Pauline Kael book was, that it's like that solves a lot of problems in the moment. And it's the same with Bond. And I mean, maybe Brosnan is just like an actor out of time, where when you're in the theater with him, you're like, he is built for 98 minutes of just fun that you're not analyzing too closely. But then if you're like watching it at your desk on your monitor, it's like, oh, well, there is a magic here that is not present the way it is when you're in the, at the theater in the dark with your phone turned off like a human being.
Yeah, I think that's all incredibly reasonable. And I guess, I don't think we're going to have any like revival screenings of Thomas Crown Affair anytime soon, so we'll probably never find out. But
yeah,
if anybody like anyone's doing a Pierce Brosnan film festival and wants to go to it, let us know if that is in fact the case. Does this play better on a giant screen?
I can't wait to see that. Wait to see that giant remastered print of Lawnmower Man. Oh, boy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or we can see giant butts of very attractive mid-40s people the way they were meant to be seen on a massive IMAX screen.
6 feet tall. Let's do it.
Julia, any final points you want to touch on before we wrap up here?
No, I think we got everything.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know what people are going to think. Like, well, should I watch the movie? I don't know. Like, go watch the movie. If you've never seen it, you know what? It's an interesting time capsule of
oh yeah, definitely watch
bygone
it.
era. And it's a fun little trifle, fun little distraction. And you can watch it for free on Tubi. So, with a few ads here and there, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
If you don't want to pay for it, then watch a few ads. And but if you can also find a giant screen, go do it that way. All right. So
the original is also on Tubi.
It is on it, and also like. Sarah, you also said something that I was thinking of like halfway through watching this movie as well, because I was thinking about the original and I was thinking about Blockbuster, and I remembered, and you mentioned this, I remembered the way that whenever a movie was remade in the 1990s, Blockbuster would they would like publish a new cut or like a remastering of that movie, and then Blockbuster would have like 5 copies, so you could go watch. If you couldn't get tickets for that movie, you could go watch the original that you could rent from Blockbuster that night. And that is like such a niche little moment of our cultural history that has like been forgotten. But I remember that there being a few examples of remakes of movies where they're like, shove out a very quick remaster of the original for rent. Blockbuster. Yeah. And that was about the only time you could see a movie made before like 1975 at Blockbuster. So there you go. I shouldn't say that Blockbuster wasn't that bad when it came to the scope of movies that it had, but it was limited. It wasn't like, it wasn't Kim's, but it wasn't.
It wasn't. But there was also, a lot less attitude than at Kim's.
That's true.
Where dating the
employee recommendations are much less pretentious.
Yeah. It's like sometimes you just want to see Austin Powers or whatever it is, and you don't want to hear about it. So not having to endure the
or Pauly Shore.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember the oeuvre of Pauly Shore being very prominent at our local Blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
Though I could see like one Kim's employee like having a Pauly Shore movie thrown in to their employee recommendation shelf just to be like, hipstery cool about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I also enjoy son-in-law. All right, Julia, would you like to conclude with our final questions for Sarah?
Yes, Sarah, what is your favorite movie of 1999?
I mean, I gotta go Blair Witch because it's something that
Interesting.
that is a movie that I still think about, and like the little hairs go up. Like that was just really a game changer, uh not just for horror movies and sort of the way that we all talked about movies and the marketing of them, but the
Mhm.
way that the internet sort of force multiplied all of that in every direction
Yeah.
was key. And I have rewatched it recently and the shit holds up. Sixth Sense, not as well, pretty
Yeah.
well, not as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw Blair Witch in the theater. I saw it with strangers. My brother had seen it a few days prior and like literally had not slept since seeing it. I was like, you have to go see it so that I can talk about it with you. And also I haven't slept in 72 hours. So I saw it and like went home and called him immediately on a landline, as was the style at the time. And we just talked about it for like 2 hours. And it was really this amazing cultural supernova in this way that felt really cool to share with like the world. I don't know. There something like that. It doesn't happen as often. Something like that, I think we might have lost. Temporarily, Barbie sort of got close to it, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Blair Witch. It still holds up. That end is just a fucking corker. So well done.
Yeah, we've had a couple of guests recently singing the praises of Blair Witch Project. I think it's having something of a revival in terms of the way that people think about it as a movie, right? Because you
Mhm.
really can't just talk about it as a movie. It wasn't just a movie; it was a whole sort of it was a project,
Yeah.
right? It was a
Yeah.
it was a work
was a
of performance art. It was like it was
Mhm.
the first the viral internet. The whole idea of viral marketing was like that's the Blair Witch Project. The whole the Sci-Fi Channel special about the history of the Blair Witch that like was shot at like an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, right? Kind of, and
Yeah.
leading up to the movie, like all of these elements of it are so part of what the experience of watching it was at the time that it's really hard to separate those things from like the movie itself. But yeah, I'm going to have to give it another watch. We talked about it very early on. We started this podcast like 3 years ago, but give it another visit because I really want to try to watch it again, like as a movie, right? Like sort of on its own merits. Because I've heard some people make some compelling arguments that like it's actually a really great just movie if you can kind of like isolate it as to just a movie, which kind of sounds like your recent kind of experience of it would suggest. So we'll see. Is that one of the ones you have or have not seen, Julia?
I
can't
have seen it,
remember.
yeah. And I distinctly remember the moment of it coming out and the like, is
Yeah.
it real or not?
Mhm.
And that just totally adding to the
Whew.
excitement of it.
We might have to revisit it anyways, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll talk about that later on. All right, moving on.
Sarah, second question, do you have a favorite movie of all time? Again, feel free to be a little loosey-goosey with it.
A favorite movie of all time. I mean, which one have I seen the most times? Oh, God.
Mm-hmm. Ocean's 11.
Is that the best one? I don't know.
No,
It
it's not
might
the best.
actually
It's not the best. Not best. Your favorite.
just the favorite.
Just the favorite.
Yeah. I mean, this is just as corny as you can possibly be, but I think it's The Sting.
Oh, that's a great answer. I
Oh,
like that one.
wonderful.
Yeah. We're in favor of that.
I've seen it a lot of times. I understand all the problems with it. It is a caper and a heist.
It's a caper. And a
Yeah.
heist. Yeah,
And
you're right. It marries the two genres into one.
I mean,
Yeah.
everyone is there's like everyone is in it, or everyone's like cousin or dad is in it. Like James Earl Jones's father is in it. Um, like just these moments that you're like, this absolutely, this should not work. Like Ray Walston is like kind of boxy. It's just it's wild. And Robert Shaw, what a performance. I mean, it's really good. I really like it a lot. I find something new in it every time. Not always a good thing. Like, why is everyone wearing tap shoes running down the streets of Chicago? It's not a musical, but I think that might be my favorite movie because it really feels like a movie. Like you're very aware that it is a movie, but it's also just a really good story that I always get sucked into. And the outfits are great. And I mean, what's not to love? Redford and Newman.
Before we go, is there anything you would like to promote, talk about, tell people about if they don't already know about you and your work and writing and et cetera, like where to find you?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you're if you ever find yourself missing Mighty Big TV, televisionwithoutpity.com, really no need. Tara and Dave and I are still doing it in podcast form over at Extra Hot Great. That's extrahotgreat.com if you want to check it out. We also have a Patreon, but we have one like free episode every week. And then another entire full hour and a half episode for our Patreon supporters. And we're just talking about TV or like making up drunk history episodes we'd like to see is something that we talked about in a recent episode. We talk about recent TV. We talk about old TV. We have a good time, and we are still, after literally half a lifetime of working together, we're still doing it. It just goes in your ears instead of your eyes. So we would love for you to come through. We have a good time, and we hope you will too. extrahotgreat.com.
I also want to thank the hosts of the Movie of the Year podcast for having me. Their episode on Notting Hill will be available sometime around the time you're hearing this. Check in with that. Had a lot of fun talking to them, and thank you guys for having me. We'll be back in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you can find me on Blue Sky at John Brooks. You can find Julia at what?
Julia Sermons at Blue Sky.
Yeah, so we have our names. It's just our names. It's so easy. You can find the show at 1999 Podcast. You can email us at 1999cageclub.me. And in the meantime, thank you guys. This is a lot of fun. It's nice to be back after a little summer break. We'll talk to you guys soon. And in the meantime, please everybody look out for frogs.
Please, hot man.